Welcome to the Explainer. Today, we're diving into how a single legal document, a treaty between two countries, actually managed to reverse the natural flow of power on one of North America's mightiest rivers. It's a story that really proves the law can be even stronger than the current. Okay, it all kicks off with a number that's pretty hard to ignore. Every single year, the United States pays Canada up to $350 million. And this payment, which is officially called the Canadian Entitlement, is for something that sounds kind of simple, just holding back water upstream. So you gotta ask, right? Why would the US agree to a deal that just looks, well, lopsided? It turns out what the US got in return was way more valuable than just electricity or even flood control. All right, so here's how we're going to break this down. We'll start with the treaty itself, and then we'll get into the wild legal idea it introduced. We'll see how the U.S. Constitution gives it the muscle to work, and explore why controlling so much water is kind of like a double-edged sword. We're even going to take a surprising detour into the world of maritime law before we look at what's next for this incredibly important river. First things first, the Columbia River Treaty. Let's dig into the basics of this massive international agreement that has really shaped the Pacific Northwest for more than half a century. So here's the deal in a nutshell. Canada agreed to build these enormous dams, creating a giant reservoir of water. For that, the U.S. gave them a one-time payment for flood control. But here's the real game changer. Canada also gets half of the extra electricity that U.S. dams generate downstream, all thanks to that controlled water flow. And that, right there, is where that huge annual payment comes from. But you know, the real prize for the U.S. wasn't just about power or flood control. It was something much, much bigger. It was about flipping a fundamental rule of law completely on its head. So, in the American West, water law has always had this simple, powerful saying, first in time, first in right. Basically, it means if you're upstream or you were the first one to use the water, you hold the most powerful rights to it. Simple as that. But the Columbia River Treaty? Yeah, it didn't just ignore this principle. It basically took centuries of legal tradition and flipped it completely upside down. And this right here shows you that strategic shift perfectly. The treaty literally moved the power from the upstream party, Canada, down to the downstream user, the US. In effect, the United States became last in time, first in right. There is a perfect metaphor that just nails the genius of this deal for the United States. Canada built the vault, the US got the key. Think about it. Canada took on all the cost and risk of storing the water, but the U.S. got the ultimate power to decide when that water gets released for its own benefit. So how in the world can a single treaty just override centuries of common law? Well, the answer isn't in water law at all. It's actually hidden away in the U.S. Constitution. The power comes from what's called the Commerce Clause. This gives the federal government the authority to regulate commerce, not just between states, but with foreign countries too. And when you have a river that crosses an international border and affects billions of dollars in economic activity, well, it becomes a federal issue, overriding any local or state laws. And the legal key that unlocks this federal power is a doctrine called navigability in fact. It's basically a test to figure out if a river is so important to commerce that it falls under federal control. And the Columbia River? Oh yeah, it passes this test with flying colors. Is it used for commerce? Check. Does it support navigation for ships? Check. Does it have a history of commercial use? Big check. Once those boxes are ticked, any dispute isn't a local issue anymore. It becomes a matter of federal interstate commerce. But here's the thing. Controlling that much water isn't just about power. It's also a huge responsibility. And this creates a really fascinating legal tension, because the power to store water is also the power to release it, sometimes with devastating results. There's this legal idea called the common enemy doctrine. Think of it this way. If a farmer builds a small wall on his property to keep his field from flooding, he's generally not liable for what happens downstream. But if he builds a massive dam and a negligent release of water floods his neighbor's entire property, that is a very different story. So that's the crucial point. Holding back all that water makes you both a protector and a potential threat. Storing it prevents floods, which is great. But a negligent release could cause catastrophic damage, which creates a huge liability for whoever is controlling the dams. Now, this whole last in time, first in right logic might seem like a really weird, unique thing for this one river treaty, but it's actually a powerful legal idea that shows up in another totally unexpected area of law. That's right. The very same principle that governs the Columbia River is a cornerstone of the complex world of maritime law, the laws that govern what happens out on the open ocean. In maritime law, when a ship has a ton of debt, the courts have to decide who gets paid first. And it's wild. As you can see here, they often pay the last person first. Take a look at the top priority, the salvage crew that just saved the ship from sinking. They get paid before the bank that holds the original mortgage. And why? Because without that last-minute critical action, there would be no ship left to pay anyone. It's the exact same logic. Last in time, first in right. Okay, let's bring this all back to the Columbia River, because this story from decades ago is far from over. In fact, a whole new chapter is being written as we speak. The treaty is being renegotiated right now. The original goals, flood control and power, are now being balanced with a whole bunch of modern challenges: ecological impacts and fish, the rights of indigenous tribes, the urgent need for climate change resilience, and, of course, a completely different energy market. The story of the Columbia River Treaty is just this powerful reminder that the rules we humans create can be every bit as mighty as the forces of nature. And it leaves us with a pretty fundamental question to chew on. When a river crosses a border, who really owns the flow? Is it geography, or is it the power of the law?